All right, we're almost ready. Well, good morning, everybody. How are you? 360 Mindset coming at you at KUHSdenver.com, streaming every Friday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thanks for sharing part of your morning with us, or afternoon, or evening, depending where you're at, because this is worldwide. We stream this stuff to people all over the world, not just here in Denver. That's how special we are. Well, and it's also special because I've got some great guests on, and today's no exception to that. I'll be introducing formally Portia Prescott, but I want to make sure you understand what our theme is today. We're going to talk about being socially aware and socially mindful of where is the equality in my neighborhood. How do I influence it? How is our neighborhood influenced by events that happen around us? Like last week, Major League Baseball came to Denver and was the host of the 2021 All-Star Game. Great time, great fun. Got people out of the house, brought them onto the stadium to celebrate. I got a chance to hang out with some of my ball players that I love to help in their lives. But I was curious about all this money that's coming into the sport. All this money that's coming into foundations that are designed to help community. Is it getting in the community? So does a major sporting event influence in any way the social behavior in your community in a way that's lasting and will consistently be delivered in improving the conditions of those marginalized and differentiated communities? I'm interested in that because I want to leave a footprint behind that people will look at and say, you know what? It's lasting. It made a difference. I like what he did. And I'm hoping I'm bringing to you like-minded people that believe in the same things. And with that being said, I'm going to start the show again like I do every week with telling you what I'm grateful for. And in line with today's theme, I am grateful for the youth programs that I was able to participate in. If it weren't for them, I would be a sorry case of hot mess. I would. I'm that active. My brain keeps going. If they didn't kind of fence me in a little bit and keep me under control, I think I would have been on a path that would not have been all that beneficial to me. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm also grateful for the coaches that really took time to care about me and understand who I was as a kid, which was very important in alignment with those programs. So as a way to backhandedly introduce my guest today, Portia Prescott comes to us from, well, she's a Denverite. She lives in the Denver area, but she's on the East Coast today. And she is going to come in and talk to us about social equality, social awareness, being mindful of those around you. But before she does that, I'm going to ask her her first question. Portia, what are you grateful for?
Oh my gosh, you gave just a lot. Hi everybody, I'm Portia Prescott. There's a lot to be grateful for. I mean, thinking about some people who lost a lot of loved ones, and so I guess I have to pause because of the COVID, because there's been, when you think of what a tumultuous year that we had, I'm grateful for my family, my daughter. I'm grateful for a lot of my coaches. Today I'm grateful for my health. Those are, I don't have COVID, I'm vaccinated and sort of survived. So those are some of the things that I humbly think about being grateful for.
It's health seems to be on everybody's mind, right? Because of the pandemic in particular. And now we're looking at the Delta variant and any number of different things. And even though we're going to focus on the health of our community in a different sense, I want to look at and ask you to look at your experiences as you walk the streets of Denver, or in the communities with your colleagues and those community leaders. How influential can it be, or is it maybe? I don't know if it can be, but maybe it is. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. That major sporting events, be it at the college level, high school level, or even professional level, do they influence the character of our communities? Do they help us think about, am I behaving in a way that's beneficial to my kids? And I saw an example of a leader on the field, represent themselves in a powerful way when confronted with a challenge. Are we spending our money in a targeted way to reinforce those benefits? So what are your thoughts, Portia, about those major events in our communities? Are they lasting in their change?
That's actually a really great question. I think absolutely yes. The question would be yes. When we do look at what we just experienced with the MLB All-Star Weekend, I believe it was 19 years ago, or was it 23 years ago? 23 years ago that we had the MLB All-Star in Colorado. And I remember attending that one and at a very different space. So having MLB in Colorado was huge from that perspective. And then we also think about the argument of moving the All-Star Weekend from Atlanta to Colorado. That was a tumultuous decision because there was the feeling that there would have been a bigger impact on more children of color had the All-Star Weekend stayed in Atlanta versus coming to Denver. And there is potentially some truth to that, but having an All-Star Weekend anywhere in the country is a benefit to youth and to any inner city or any urban community, because it did allow young people of color, Black and brown community to participate on a myriad of different levels from various different organizations. You've got children who took pictures with the owner of the Rockies that would have never had that opportunity. So to me, the lasting impact isn't tomato. It's wherever it appears, it makes a huge impact on urban cities. The second part of that question is, are we investing in our urban cities for that to continue? We can't be like everyone comes together around the holiday time and, that's it. We had our celebration, whatever your celebration is in the winter, and then we go back to business as usual. I think the lasting impact of sports needs to be more invested. And do we look at the future of having programs 2 or 3 weeks that lead up to it? In other instances in the summer, are there going to be any programs that last? Because like you said, even though I'm a girl, a woman, I don't know where I would be in life. Having had my own company for 10 plus years, attending Ivy League schools, being in Denver, growing up in Montbello and Park Hill, if I didn't have sports, if I didn't have my track coach, if I didn't have my softball coach, if I didn't have my basketball coach. It was my basketball coach, my softball coach, and my track coach who made the most pivotal impact, not only just in me playing athletically, because as a woman, you don't think about going to the league. You think about dealing with adversity. How do you get over a loss? How do you improve? Consistency in practice when you don't want to be nice, or when you want to be team sportsmanship, when you understand it's a game and you have to walk off and at the end of the game, win or lose, shake your opponent's hand, and you have to do that. So, just even being from the point as a girl and not want to go to the NBA or the NFL, the character building skills that I literally learned very early from my sport coaches.
And you and I both have similar experiences, the difference being gender, but similar experiences in the influences of leaders and coaches in our lives to help build us up. My question these days, are we getting enough of those leaders in front of enough kids? We talk about programs like the Players Alliance that was recently created by Major League Baseball to go into those diverse communities and represent Black leadership to them and show them that this is possible for you. You can be a Derek Jeter. You could be a Curtis Granderson. But I'm wondering if the money, the dollars are big. On Monday, Players Alliance was awarded by MLB another $150 million to carry their mission forward. And I know many of the individuals who have come together to organize this strategy, and that MLB then signed off on, initially with $10 million, and then on Monday another $150 million. And I'm concerned for them, which I've shared, that those dollars won't go deep enough in the communities. It will have a great website and colorful trucks that deliver equipment at a certain time of the year, like at a holiday, you said. But it doesn't really get to bringing kids out of their houses when they need to be brought out of their houses. It doesn't give them a bus to get where they need to get so they can have a lunch to go on the practice field and play with those kids. Those are my concerns. Are we doing enough, Portia? Are we hitting the targets that really lift up the community?
When we're talking specifically about the Denver and Aurora greater communities, the answer would be no. And when we look at the MLB and them funding $150 million to the Players Alliance, I think that's huge because it's an established organization, and for analytics, they will be able to produce data. But for life changing, we need to identify more organizations that are on the grassroots level helping the young kids, because what you just said, when you play a sport, for example, baseball, you need the equipment, you need the baseball bag, you need the baseball gear, you need cleats. Typically, the clubs would do, local fundraising to get some of those items. But what do you do for the students that don't? Right now, we just experienced COVID. Parents don't necessarily have the luxury of having off time because we're in a crisis with employee shortage. Everyone was working as much as they could possibly work. Sports were shut down. The whole entire apparatus that kept us in routine was thrown off as far as sports. So I think what the Players Alliance needs to really do is look at a more targeted grassroots effort of partnerships with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club. But they will have to think outside of the box because COVID devastated inner city communities. And if you go to any major city, because I'm out here in Philadelphia, Chicago, the crime and shooting rate of young black on black, it just exploded. And it exploded, and some of it was instigated from social media. They're not even having face-to-face contact. So I think when we do what we do when they talk about voting, we need to look at what we can do for youth programming and reaching those type of grassroots leaders. So
I'm glad you such a great setup. Here's a quote from a famous Major League Baseball player, and his quote is about integrity. And here's the quote: "I don't let my mouth say nothing my head can't stand." So said Jackie Robinson. And it's about, if you say it, you do it. If you can't stand it, then don't do it. Be real. Now that cuts across gender, it cuts across skin color, it cuts across socioeconomics, because it's pure. So I'm wondering, with this next question I have for you, is what kind of community programs have you seen that make the greatest difference in neighborhoods?
Well, for me, growing up, and you had me actually trying to say if I had a son, where would I even start? For me was two. One was the YMCA, which I don't even know if it exists or hardly where does it exist anymore.
Yeah.
Was the community, the Colorado, let's speak differently, let's speak specifically in Denver. It was the East Denver YMCA, it was the Glen Island Recreational Center, and there were the AAU sports leagues that we just knew about. You knew where to find, if you didn't know how to get involved as a kid, you knew if you could show up at the East Denver YMCA, you showed up at the Glen Island, you would be able to find where, because the coaches were hanging out there. It was a community feeling, so it wasn't like you had to go hunting for athletics. I mean, I swam so much in the East Denver YMCA, I was a lifeguard and a swim coach. So it was a community center. So now the question becomes, if I'm in Denver right now and my mind is competing across the entire city, what is the go-to recreation center where you can go hang out all day during the summer and play basketball?
The YMCA is still there, but now it's a shelter. It's not the same as it was, or to the purpose you're saying is important, that kids can get there and they can have something to do when they get there, and and in doing something, there are leaders there that want to be there to coach and to guide and to help them. And I'm trying to stay too strongly away from sports because there's crafts, there's music, there's drama, there's gardening. I mean, there's all kinds of things that those centers could provide to allow kids to stay connected to their community and safe, and be safe. And we seem to have gotten away from renewing those spaces that you and I had great experiences with. AAU basketball. In Chicago was my play. I brought kids. I have some stories of sadness about how kids were going to the Dairy Queen, and one was on my basketball team, his girlfriend was on another team, and there was a drive-by shooting, and she never played basketball again. He was just distraught to the point of almost comatose. I mean, he's just like, what do I do? And the game brought him back. Now, eventually, she survived. She didn't die, but she was very badly wounded and lost almost 2 years of training, and lost a full scholarship at a college. So that, if we can provide these spaces, we hopefully can avoid those incidences for kids. And in Denver specific, AAU is a sketchy piece. You go down to Colorado Springs, vibrant. AAU is vibrant, but so we've got. I want us to be consistent. As a board member on the Boys and Girls Club, I see that there is differentiation and marginalization of the allocation of funds. If you're in Denver Metro, you're funded really, really well. You go to between here and Colorado Springs with any Boys and Girls Club, they're still there, but they're struggling, and they're struggling without need. When we could look at the funds that the professional teams in Denver give to the Metro Center is wonderful and should be done, but we need to spread that out. So when you look at those programs, where did volunteerism sit in the success of those centers? And are we missing volunteerism here in Denver? Do we need more of it?
I'm trying to be politically correct because it's spinning, because I think the problem really more volunteerism. I think when you think back to when you think about AAU, and a lot of these were dads who gave time and committed time to coaching these teams. Obviously, dads had to get off work, have some sort of sustainable income that allowed them to keep a roof over their head, so that they could have the time for being involved in the baseball and the sports and being involved. I think of like how I got to practice when I was a little kid was my dad or my mom or my grandma. We would have track practice over at Manual High School, and Tony Wells was a coach, infamous coach, but he never was like paid a lot. It wasn't like, everyone could live in affordable Denver, and it wasn't paid a lot. So I think the quality of life was valued differently, how much you're involved in community, how much you are, a participant in your community. And I think where we are right now is we are having to have our leaders in our community and in our legislation and in our churches and in our boards really help us reconnect to what do we now define as the quality of life, so that we can be available to volunteer. If you have to consume, then you have to have 2 or 3 jobs to deal with your family. Oh shucks, I gotta figure out how to turn off the Indisturb, but I think we need more. If we could get more younger people involved, like 25-year-olds coaching, since they don't have the burden of life. If there's an organization that could, get like I don't want to say AmeriCorps, but Youth Corps, Coach Corps, then we could have some of that continuity that we've kind of lost right now because of COVID and because everyone's trying to put everything back together. Right now, if you can just go on vacation, you're doing great.
So one of the things you're sharing is something I harp on all the time, and it's captured in one word: awareness. And I look at the 5 senses as our input for awareness, right? What I see, what I hear, what I smell, all of those kinds of things, and heighten our awareness. So I know that I'm aware of college students that are athletes that have their summers off, or modified. They may be working out, but they have time to volunteer to coach. They just don't know it exists. They're so into their stuff that they don't know that those opportunities are out there for them to support the communities they play in and go to school in. So absolutely, those are programs that I want to be able to move forward in the future. So when you look at your consulting practice and working with your partner and talking to the leadership that you talk to, what are some of the things that they say to throw up obstacles? Or maybe their mind hasn't been changed yet about, oh, I didn't realize volunteerism was down. I could help that by changing my human resource policies in my company. Or I could, are you hearing anything that gives us hope that business leadership is willing to kind of smooth the track a little bit and remove the obstacles for the moms and dads to actually get a practice and coach a team again?
I think what that's called, like right now, it's the crux. They're like, we're cracking the egg, and we'll see what once we start to cook it. It can be a souffle or it can be a fry. That's it. But we are cracking the egg. I mean, if you hear the word diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's like a big global thing. I think a lot of corporations are wanting to hire people that are different diversity. They're having worked in HR partnered with a lot of HR organizations, from the energy companies to the utility, phone companies to this. That's the big topic. How do we bring back the diversity, the opportunities for social equity? Remember when companies would have softball teams and people who worked at the company would be the softball team? So normally you might not have been playing on a softball team with someone of a different, outside your just neighborhood. But if you're working with coworkers and you're on a softball team, then you're playing against other softball teams, then, you're looking at diversity. You're meeting different people in a social environment that is providing social equity without segregation, without differentiation. We're all, commonality. And I think we need to focus more on sports because it is universal. I think people do enjoy sports, and they don't want to be in politics in the sports, and I think that's why we struggle. But at the same time, the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are the first time that we're talking about social awareness. You could not deny George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. You cannot deny that there has to be some sort of police, I don't want to use the word defunding, I don't want to use any politically charging words, but there has to be some sort of acknowledgement that Black men have a little different when it comes to police. We just have to at least acknowledge it. And what do we do about that? So, thus, we can keep those young boys off the streets, out of the, custody of the police. Where else can they hang out other than being in a targeted location for the police to round them up? So that's, when we're talking about social equity and new programming, acknowledging the George Floyd case, acknowledging, we have to do more on a younger level with kids, with sports.
It's such a great segue, Portia, what you just said, because my next question is about the level of interest of kids of all ages to actively participate and seek out social behavior activities, like whether it's playing chess to, basketball, and everything in between. I'm concerned that what we've gone through it with COVID and the incidences that rocked our social world with George Floyd and any number of violent incidences of individuals in Louisville or in Florida or in Texas, is that scaring families into holding back their participation and looking for programs? And I mean, it concerns me.
It's scary. It's sad, but unfortunately, it really is. It's also holding families back from letting their kids get jobs. I mean, I didn't really think about it until I had a couple of my daughter's friends, and they also have daughters and sons, and they really just didn't even want their black sons to leave the house. Like, there's a fear of, if you go to, they had shootings at the parks, the playgrounds where they play basketball. They had shootings, anywhere that there were too many young people congregating, even if they were just coming or going, parents don't want their kids just out. It's safer. It made people feel, unfortunately, that this hibernation is, I can protect you better if you're not in the streets. I can protect you better if you're not out in the parks playing ball, which, then something might pop off. There's no structured, safe spaces where they can technically, right now, where do you congregate in Denver as a teenager?
Yeah.
I mean, in the East Coast, they congregate Jersey Shore. They have to have enough curfews because all the teens are rolling around on the Jersey Shore. But that's just kids at night just destroying, vandalizing, being teens, bonfires, nothing productive. When the lights are on and it's daytime, American teens just congregate.
And with that being said, I was down on the red carpet before the All-Star game, and that was at the Chop House. And recently, Dick Montfort had developed that McGregor Square that's between the Chop House and Jackson's. There used to be a parking lot there. Well, now it's got residential living there. It's got a big food court. I mean, it's really, really nice. So that's where they had the red carpet. And I'm watching the crowd. I'm looking at the crowd. Can you guess what was missing in the crowd that was there? Just take a look. Well, that and one other thing about the youth. Describe the missing youth did not look like what?
They were white. They were.
Yeah.
They were white. I don't want to. You're a white guy, so I didn't want to say anything. But the big article that was like, why are more black kids not even just playing baseball?
Yeah. So I talked to some of my ball player colleagues, and I said, guys, what can we do? I mean, you're part of the Players Alliance, for crying out loud. You want to promote awareness to the marginalization. You want to promote the game of baseball to black communities. Why in the heck didn't we just get a van or a bus and get these kids in here to take a look at all the mascots that were parading up and down the red carpet, and then be able to say, hello to their favorite baseball player on the National League and American League rosters that walked by. I mean, the most diversity I saw, Portia, was from the kids that the players brought with them on the red carpet, their own children. And they were adorable, but that also points out the separation of economics. They can afford it. They were in a safe place. There was security all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't we bring those kids in there and help them experience this? It was a wonderful event, missing diversity.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to do baseball has become a game of privilege almost if you're of color. I know we have the Latin countries where baseball is easier accessible and it's like an escape to get out of poverty for some of our Latin baseball players. But for an American game, it's become a little bit more politicized. I'm an avid hiker, walker. My nonprofit, we started a hiking group for women of color because we just didn't see ourselves on the trail. And we didn't feel like we belonged, because if I don't belong if I don't see myself. The outdoor spaces we kind of had just accepted as a cultural idiom that's just for white people. We don't do that. We don't, so when I started the organization, we basically just said, hey, we're just going to create the space that we're going to be here at this time. If you decide to show up, then you can see people who look like us. If you're walking in any park right now in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado Springs, Aurora, and you see some kids practicing and playing baseball, you don't see very many black people. You don't see any. And it was weird because I saw games going on, the tarp, if we would go hit balls, it would be fun. I think it's tough because at the very little league level, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, you don't see any black kids. And so now you have to realize if you're a parent that's of color and you want to put your kid in baseball, you have to have some little economic means to even socially fit in with the dads and the families that you're going to see. So it's tough because I have to say, I wouldn't have played soccer. I was All-American in soccer. I played soccer from 5 years old till I'm almost 20, right? So I love women's soccer. I'm a soccer. You know, at that time I was addicted to soccer. Our team was the only team that was all black. And it was the only one. But, so we were always playing white teams, or there would be teams that were majority white that had sprinkles of some black kids, but they were in other areas. So we had our city park, we practiced at city park, but you knew you could show up and play soccer. And our softball team ended up being all black. So we were the one all black softball team, and we played against the Spanish softball teams or the white softball teams. So even so, it was still very segregated. Right now, you don't have an all-black baseball team right now. You know, not to say that that's how you want it to be, but none of the parents are looking around to the left and to the right going, you guys, we don't have any kids of color playing in this league. It's not comfortable for the parent. It's not comfortable for the kid.
And I'm coming back to an experience I had this last weekend at the convention center. They had wonderful displays there for Major League Baseball's All-Star Game weekend, and one of them was history. Had lots of great displays on history. And one of those displays was Negro League Baseball. And I was standing next to a family looking at all the artifacts and the hats and the different pictures of the teams all across the country, and then they stopped at a picture of a Negro League Baseball team in Colorado, in Denver. Now, understand that this is back in the days when the hooded clubs were here too, in the Stapleton area. So there was this huge, you know, they were playing at their life, being threatened, playing baseball in the Negro League in Denver. And the little kids that were there they were asking their dad and mom, what is that? What is that? They didn't really understand that there was actually a Negro League. And one of the little boys said, "That's a really cool hat. Where do you get those?" So they don't make those anymore. And so I'm going, whoa, this is just baffling to me that this rich history was so pushed to the side and ignored. And yet at the same time, in current day moments, with that excitement and that energy, we don't have a strategy on how to perpetuate it, how to sustain the display, how to say, hey, it's going to be in your school, or it's, hey, take a look at your history book. I'm sorry to say, that may not happen. And that's why I'm so energized, because I want it to happen.
Well, the tougher part, though, is that it's easier to go play golf as a black person than it is to go play baseball. Because you don't have to, remember, we're talking about social awareness and social equity.
Yeah.
We talked to the African-American, black and brown communities, we don't have social equity. So if I get a kid who can play a sport, I'm going to push him to basketball, and I'm going to push him to football, or if I don't want him to do anything that he could have a concussion, then I'm going to say, hey, go play golf. Because I don't have to socialize with all those other parents. I can just sit and you know, my daughter was a competitive figure skater, and I think the only reason why we really quit skating as much, and she's teaching little peewees now, is that we always were the only black. So whenever we traveled and skated, people would come from the malls, from the centers, from wherever, and the focus on her having to skate, then because she was black, it put a lot of pressure on her because she was the only black skater. And she loved to skate. She wasn't like, I want to be the Olympic gold. She wanted to just skate. And it became a problem for her, you know, that much pressure when it was taking the fun away, because it was no longer her performance or what she did. We had to think of crafting routines where she could demonstrate that she could have the poise as white skaters, not just her jumps, because, well, you know, the black skaters, all they do is jump, so they can get really high, but they don't have any artistry in their program. I mean, to have to think of your routine to make sure you're incorporating extra ballet into it so that the judges don't automatically go, oh, well, you know she's going to do all the jumps, but she doesn't have this because she's black. It's the social awareness, it's the social equity that we don't have in a lot of these sports, and especially at youth sports. We have no social equity.
You're reinforcing the extreme task of disseminating the knowledge that for some of us it's just second nature to know what's missing, and second nature to know what the answers are to the missing information, and yet for us to really get charged up and get the ball down the hill gathering momentum, we need the knowledge, we need the understanding of people in our communities of all colors, because as those little kids, they didn't know there was a Negro League, they didn't know, and so we need to energize them. So I'm going to pause just for a minute and recognize that I'm so glad you're here, Portia. This is wonderful conversation with Portia Prescott, and we're talking about social awareness and the influences on social equality. Do sporting events, do events in our community influence our awareness to a level that we really strive and then successfully attain social equality? Current day, I think the answer for me is no. I'm not going to put words in Portia's mouth. I'll let her answer that when I come back in a minute. But this is KUHSdenver.com. We stream all over the world messages and music to those who need to be motivated. And that's very important for me here at 360 Performance. I'm your host, Dr. Whiteman, coming to you every Friday at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time with messages that hopefully will build your perspective and your insights on what's important to you, and because of that, you take action on it. You make it happen. You create an agenda that fits you, and you be the best that you can be. So, back with Portia Prescott. Portia, you know, kids, that's our future. That is where we need to go. And kids, being with kids, kids reinforcing kids, multiplying those occurrences is what we ended our last comments about getting kids involved and changing the paradigm. I had a kid who was a hockey player, a black kid that was just an outstanding skater, defenseman, carrying his bag into a hotel, and the bellhop took the bag, was going to put it away, and said, so whose name should I put on this? No presumption that it was his bag. I'm going, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. I didn't think about it. I was a little bit too aggressive. I went over there and said, is there any possibility that that could be his bag? In your mind, is there any possibility that it could be his bag? And I said his name is B-R-I-A-N, and I'll let him tell you his last name because he's proud of it. I flipped out. I went crazy. It boggles my mind how often we have these racist comments that they don't even know it's racist because they have this privilege that they have been socialized into, and it just bugs the heck out of me.
We call those microaggressions. You know, that you're constantly having microaggression comments given to you throughout your life. I mean, it's perpetuated, and I just think the important thing is, like, growing up in a state like Colorado, like, versus being in the East Coast where you see so much more diversity. I think we need to do more, because I think we just completely forgot about sports. I mean, to be honest, we have this high-tech, green energy, global this, and I'm all for it, but I think we could absolutely have just forgotten about our basics. And when we're looking at the epidemic of African-American dropout in DPS, in rural public schools, is over 50%. When you look at it's taking, because we're not tweeting about it in our minds, I guess it doesn't exist. Because it's not on Facebook, it doesn't exist. I mean, we should all know Facebook is everyone's marketing tool, and you're not going to post your depression. Well, some people do, but I mean, it is not the space to use for people who are economically challenged. You had kids who had no access to internet during COVID who were sitting outside parking lots of Taco Bell to have internet. So they're forgotten. if they don't have a social media presence at this point in time in life, it's almost like those kids are forgotten. So I think hopefully our mayor of Denver, the mayor of Aurora, some of the responsibility is going to have to shift to the cities. Some investment in our youth recreational centers. And I don't mean like just the actual facility itself. I mean an investment in the staff. I mean, we can create Office of Economic whatever empowerment. We can create Office of Economic this. We can create new legislative branches. Why are we not partnering with Boys and Girls Club, looking at their motto, how they keep their organization staffed, and why are we not creating a budget, a line item within each city between Aurora and Denver that is allocating not just maintenance of facility upkeep, but staff, and create a state of Office of Economic Youth or Office of Youth Recreation, so that this becomes an investment from your tax dollars, not just going into the, supposedly everything is supposed to go into the schools. We know all of our tax dollars don't fund the schools that we would like. That's the battle. But then you don't have schools that have the same budgets for equipment.
Yeah.
You know, when Montbello won football this year, it was huge because they were the lowest funded football program.
And that's a testament, Portia, to the desire of those kids to the game. So can you imagine what would happen if we invested in their infrastructure, in their ability to get to the practice field, to feed them properly and make sure that the nutrition is there. And I'm not talking about anything extraordinary. I'm just talking about even the playing field, literally. Their social playing field being level for everybody. And yet they still succeed. It's like, I mean, I'm a performance coach, so I know if a little bit more delivers multiple impacts. It's not, you don't need to do a lot to get a huge growth in performance. You know, I talked to Curtis Granderson, the president of the Players Alliance, about the money going to things like Wi-Fi systems in communities to improve that so kids can have that. How about aligning with the local community transportation system to give kids bus stops primarily aligned to the practice schedules so the kids can get to and from, because moms and dads can't check out of their job at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to go get them or deliver them if their practice is later. Like when you were a basketball player, sometimes you had a late practice and sometimes you had an early practice because you shared the gym with the boys. Well, that doesn't fit moms and dads' schedule very well. And yet we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on a lot of fluff and not a lot of substance that's grounded in the needs of the community to better the social status.
Right.
So I have this question for you. What are neighborhoods really needing to make their environments safe so that they can participate? Do we need more fields, or do we just need better looking buildings?
I mean, the bigger part of me would say we need more fields. We need more, you know, baseball diamonds. We need more batting cages. That we need more soccer fields. We need more track fields. I grew up in Denver, and I could walk over to Smiley, and we ran that track. I technically would walk to practice to get all the way down to Manual for it. It was like a long walk, but worst case scenario, we're just going to have to walk to get to practice. And we ran so that was accessible. Now you don't have high schools accessible the way they were accessible. You know, everyone, there was a soccer field and there was a track field at Smiley that we always just went to. It wasn't locked up, gated, there weren't hours. You know, it was just, you could go there. When I think about basketball, you always knew at Overland Park or something park in Overland, and like near Overland High School, there was always some games going for basketball where the girls would just sit and, you know, kid after kid after kid. So when I think of a facility, what facility do we have that has public access to a state-of-the-art basketball court where kids can play, state-of-the-art Olympic pool where kids can swim and go for free? So it's not just a facility, because they converted Skyland, Hiawatha, into like community center. but is doing too much. You know, Skyline, you just went there for sports in the pool. You didn't go there to have meetings and, you know, like, a library's in there. I don't know. It's like everything's in there, and that's not what we need. We need basketball courts. We need tennis courts. I learned how to play golf for free at City Park Golf Course in the summer. It costs a little fee. Parents would donate however you got in, like, your equipment, but just being able to walk up to it and watch kids play and go, how do you guys get in that? So it's something that has to be accessible. You just walk to, not, go online and go to our website. That's assuming a privilege that they have a device to go Google. Like, that's just too much assumption. We need some outdoor spaces designated that are inviting, where white people will play, where black people will play, where you can walk up as a kid. There's some structured camps going on that are funded by the city, so in the summertime, if you want to sign up and be a part of the camp, and you happen to see the kids playing or doing track relays or track, you can just walk up and sign up, and it's not your parent had to go online and register you. You need to be able to have it accessible that you can just almost literally walk up to it for some of these kids.
So, Portia, this scenario that you're painting here, let me ask you about another element to that. So we bring you and I are successful bringing all these kids together. We get good space, we bring them all together, and then somebody in the community says, well, you're gathering together a criminal element. All these kids of all these different colors coming together, that could be a criminal element. I don't know. And I discount that. I disregard it. Like you said earlier, it's one of those micro-aggressive things.
Thought of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, yeah. So I'm thinking, wait a minute. We need to get the whole community involved in this. The police department, the firefighters have to be able to know that they could volunteer as an official, or the police department needs to have a change in their routes on their patrols so that they're protecting the kids that are going to these centers, not being defensive that the kids are a criminal element or could cause some kind of riot. I mean, good gosh, we've got examples historically within the last 2 years of neighborhoods all over the country thinking that because people are protesting, that's a criminal element. That's part of how our country was founded, for crying out loud. So I want to make sure that we are doing the right things in the community holistically, that we include everybody in the mission of helping the kids, so that when kids see the cops at a basketball game, they know they're there to protect them, not to handcuff them. Yes.
We're like at square one from that type of relationship with the police. I think that some communities are trying. I know my church in Montbello partners with Police District, Denver District 5, to come serve ice cream consistently, just to do things so they can start to see similar faces.
Yeah.
Just to be able to, like, oh, okay, I've seen that kid before. I do know that the Aurora Police Department doesn't necessarily have the same infrastructure where they can partner with a very of-color place entity. I'm having several meetings, and I'd be curious to see if they are looking into that, because there is a distrust of the police. It wouldn't necessarily just be, are they protecting us? Some people and some parents would fear that just because my kid is playing on a team with this kid who may have a gang affiliation from a family member, now you're saying my son is gang affiliated. And so you're not there to protect, you're there to collect data and get names of future arrests.
Yeah, because it's given by association.
Initiatives, So I think we're not in that space where we can collaborate with the police. We're just not. I mean, we need to look at the firefighters, kind of gatewaying it to that. I want to be positive about the police, but I grew up with a major distrust of the police. At the same time, I'm all about against what everyone wants to say. I don't believe in calling it something else. We need police. There are really bad criminals out there. We are really bad people, and they risk their lives, and sometimes they don't get paid what they should get paid, just like teachers. So I have a controversial view of that, but at the same time, we need someone else, like the fire department, to help us with that relationship, because there is a major distrust of the police. If I saw police coming to near the neighborhood, you're looking at them funny, like, do we have a situation where the police have their children on a team with other children, and that social component, and I'm meeting this police officer with their family, not them uniformed as if they're collecting names to say they're all gang affiliated because they're black. If we were the black soccer team and we were all gang affiliated because, several of the brothers were gang members. You wouldn't say that.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you say that. I'm reminded of times I spent in Washington Park in Chicago, and that's south of the main park on Halsted, and that was the park that had the Chicago Police Department would donate money to resurface the basketball courts. Now these basketball courts were asphalt courts with metal chain rims, and we had everything from gang members to college ball players to players trying to get into the NBA playing on those courts in the summertime, because this was legit hardcore slam-a-jam of basketball. And the cops were there on the sidelines in plain clothes just making sure that they maintained order, but they played the game. We don't have that now in Chicago. That's been lost. And at the time we played, everybody knew. We knew there was a gang member playing next to you or defending you. But it was the game. You respected the game and you played the game in that space. Now what you did off the court was entirely different. And there were unwritten rules about logistics, about how far away could you be before they might handcuff you if you had a warrant outstanding for you, or any number of things. And everybody understood those guidelines. That's leadership. So my question to you in finishing up our time together, Portia, is what makes the most difference, money or leadership in the community?
Oh gosh, man, that's like a tough question, because I want to say it's leadership, but I want to say, like, when you're just talking about the Players Alliance, these are athletes that now experienced the game, grew up from whatever their socioeconomic status was, and now they have economic means. So the most color you saw was in this private little red carpet. Who didn't even know how to get there? From a lesser, you could be a leader over in Montbello, but I don't have any relationship with any of these ball players. So all of the leadership that I've given my community, if I don't have a relationship to, I guess, the money. I mean, LeBron James funds a lot, but we gotta have a relationship, to the community, to somebody. And sometimes they form these tax foundations for tax purposes, not necessarily just to give a so we need money because we need the Players Alliance. But what we need for the Players Alliances to do is to maybe next time a city like this, we're having a big event like that, and you're not necessarily in Atlanta, because remember, everyone was telling me that they were going to have their kids, I'm going to do this in Atlanta, and they're taking it from Atlanta, they're taking it from the black people. Well, it's still going to be the privileged black people that are going to have access to this, and not the young inner city kids. I went to, I grew up, low poor, Montbello, Park Hill. My parents were fervent about education and sports. And I'm able to start my company, I'm able to go to Ivy League colleges, graduate from, Brown, I mean, I'm able to do all that path, and it was really more to have a gateway key to the other side, to the wealth, to be able to intermix with the wealthy. That was my grandmother and my family's perception, because your relationship to the money is going to rub off, right?
Well, and I'm glad you said it that way, because the phrase I use is to my athletes when you point out that they came from meager means and excelled and got some gravitas, some branding. I say, build brand or build benefit. If you're building brand, you're just going for the tax write-off. You're not truly putting money into the community. If you're building benefit, you're going to get both. You're going to benefit the community and you're going to benefit yourself. But it's a mindset. You've got to be in a mindset to either make a choice. I don't care which choice you make. Just let me know what it is. Are you building brand, which is kind of superficial, or are you building benefit? So that those, when you truly speak out of your mouth, to the quote that we talked about with regard to Jackie Robinson, I don't let my mouth say nothing my head can't stand. I'm building benefit. I'm high integrity here. So as I say that, Portia, I want to thank you again. We've got a few minutes before the show ends. I'm grateful to you for participating in the advisory group that we work with. But more importantly to me is it's what you and I do as individuals within the communities that we influence that matters the most. Because talk can be cheap. And I want actions to speak. And that's why I'm so excited and fervent about relationships like yours, relationships like I'm beginning with the Players Alliance, but more importantly, the relationship I make with that wide-eyed kid who has no filters. They just want to do. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy the time they have on whatever the court it is. Court of life, court of sport, court of drama, whatever it is. They just want to do. So I know that we're going to have more incidences where we're going to talk about these topics in the future. So in closing, Portia, what do you want our listeners to take away from today's comments from you?
What I want them to take away from is look to your left and look to your right. If you find that you're in a situation where you're only hiring people that look like you, you're only socializing with people who look like you, you're only working with people who look like you, this is now the time that we need to have access and explore and look around and really create a culturally diverse palette of people that we have as just resources, and that we can go to, that we can have conversations with. One of the things that is frustrating me with the politics that we're experiencing now in America is people don't have conversations. I can't have a conversation with certain people. Our kids can't play together because you like blue and I like red. And I think we need to get past that and go back to relationships. We are coming into an era where we're being socially deficit because of the lack of wanting to get to know someone who's different than what we're used to. So basically the bottom line is get out of your comfort zone. Go, get out of your comfort zone. If you, try something different, go to different, sporting events, put your kid in a karate class or in a different, that you might have to drive 15 minutes to or not 5 minutes to experience a little bit more cultural diversity.
Portia, thank you for sharing your wonderful and giving spirit with us. I am so fortunate to have met you and want to extend our relationship into the future. So thank you.
Well, I look forward to coming back. I'm always in the community. My company is Jefferson Prescott. Go to jeffersonprescott.com. We're going to be doing so much more this year, especially in 2022. We are now becoming the go-to for outreach, diversity, equity, inclusion, and brand expansion is our new, we call it. For people who are like a little super white, we're giving them some brand expansion. So I have a lot of super, super white people calling me, and I don't say diversity, equity, inclusion. I said, we're just going to expand your brand a little bit.
There you go. I love that. All right, folks, for next week, climbing a mountain like we were climbing today. We're going to climb a mountain with the author Jim Davidson of this wonderful book. It's the next Everest, and he did it. He climbed Everest. He is a crazy man on rock and snow, and he will share with us the adventures he had that challenged his integrity and his resiliency, because it was blowing and snowing up on Everest when he climbed the mountain in 2018. So join us then. Have a great day, everybody. Portia, stick with me just a second as we close out, and I'll say a proper goodbye to you. Have a good one, everybody.